It's actually pretty easy to beat 99% of people because most people do the wrong stuff. But most of growth is counterintuitive. Focused on the one thing that is going to move the tree up the most. So it's not about the amount of tasks that you finish. It's the amount of growth each task gets you. And this is why even biblically they talk about the way to keep a tree healthy is to prune it. And pruning literally means you're cutting things off. Commitment is the elimination of alternatives, which means commitment is literally the recipe for growth. Is that you focus all resources on the one growth path that you get the most for. Right now, you have a big list of things that you think you should do, because those are the ones that you're like, oh, I can knock that out pretty quick. But what ends up happening is you get to the end of the day and you still have that number one thing that's sitting there on your list. And that number one thing you probably know is the most important thing, that if you only did that one thing, it would make the rest of the things on that list irrelevant by comparison. But what ends up happening is that we do the B+ problems all day because it makes us feel good because we know how to solve them. We prefer the fast dopamine, or whatever you want to call it, of solving the quick problem rather than solving the most important. I was on a call with one of my portfolio teams, and it was a paid ads team, and they were having issues with pixel tracking. And this issue had been going on for 3 weeks. And fundamentally, if the pixel is not bringing in the right traffic, none of the conversion rate optimization ever will matter ever again if the pixel gets worse and worse and worse because we're seasoning it with worse data. You might find out that once you fix the pixel issue, some of your conversion rate issues might go away because maybe you're getting the right traffic in there. Let's say you had that list of 5 things to do. You have those 5, quote, priorities. If you do the one that matters the most, what you will often find is that number 2 through 5, sometimes 1 become irrelevant. Other times, something over here actually all of a sudden becomes the next most important. Then you figuratively would have wasted all of the time doing 2, 3, and 5, because by the time you did number 1, it actually made those solutions based on a concept that we call the theory of constraints, which is that you have one thing in your business that is limiting your, fundamentally, you have to prioritize against all things you could do, known and unknown, and the people who move the fastest in terms of distance covered are the ones who get the most for every unit of effort, which is not about how fast they do things, but how much speed they cover with the things they choose to do. And the thing is that most of the times these are B and C level problems because you know how to solve them. Yay. But this one is the A+ problem that you have no idea how to solve. Once you've identified what the priority is, what the one thing that matters most is, then typically humans, us and your team, will likely not want to do it. It's very much in our human nature to just continue to work less and less because it's easier. But because prioritization is so powerful, if you get the one thing right, it makes the rest of it irrelevant. The thing about doing easy problems is that they're so tempting, because we all want to have that quick win. We want to have 1 or 2 wins. Hey, I want to get my momentum going. But what ends up happening is that you eat half your day, and then you get a couple calls, a couple interruptions, and then the day's gone. And the next day, you still have that number 1 that's sitting at the top, but you fill it up with 2 or 3 more easy wins. And you never get the big wins to happen. That continuous parade of little wins never moves the ball forward. You never get the breakthroughs. You never get the growth. A big part of why those A+ problems are the big, hairy problems is because they are soaked in the unknown. We don't know how to solve them. And so I want to give you this frame of understanding that I have, which is when you have these other things underneath, 2 through 5 on that list, you typically know what you need to start doing, how it's going to go, and what it's going to look like at the end. The number 1 problem, you typically don't know where to start, and you don't know what to do, and you don't know how it's going to end. But you know that if big picture, if you solve that one thing, everything else would be irrelevant.